I never saw it coming. Looking back, it was almost laughable how blind I was, how perfect everything seemed. Hannah, my wife, was the kind of woman most men would envy. She was beautiful, fit, and had a natural charm that seemed to draw people in effortlessly. She made a career out of it too, becoming a well-known fitness blogger. Her Instagram was filled with workout routines, motivational posts, and photos that could make you feel guilty for skipping the gym. And me? I was content in the background. I wasn't some insecure husband. I was proud of her success, of her dedication. We had 2 kids together, a boy Noah and a girl Emma. Both of them adored their mother, and why wouldn't they? She was the fun one, the adventurous one. Always taking them on weekend hikes, always posting about how they were her biggest inspiration. Our life seemed idyllic from the outside, but maybe that's the problem. When something looks too good to be true, it usually is. It started with little things. She began spending more time away from home, training sessions that went longer than usual, business trips that seemed to pop up out of nowhere. I never thought twice about it. After all, she was on the rise. She had sponsorships with big brands and a growing client base. I figured it was part of the hustle. One Saturday morning, I took Noah and Emma to my parents' house for the weekend so Hannah could have some downtime to work. She'd been stressed lately, and I thought a quiet house would do her good. I had no reason to suspect anything else. None at all. That evening, I returned home earlier than expected. I wanted to surprise her, maybe catch her in one of those candid, peaceful moments I loved, her in her comfy clothes, curled up on the couch, pretending she wasn't working on another blog post. But as I pulled up to the house, I noticed a truck parked outside. Not unusual, I thought. Probably someone from the neighborhood. I slipped in through the basement door, trying to be quiet. It was supposed to be a surprise after all. But as I reached the top of the stairs, something stopped me cold. Laughter, a man's laughter. And then I heard her voice. It was soft, playful, almost flirtatious in a way I hadn't heard in years. My heart began to pound in my chest. Maybe it was innocent, I told myself. Maybe she'd invited a friend over, someone from her fitness circle. But as I stepped closer, the laughter turned into something else, sounds I couldn't ignore. The pit in my stomach grew deeper with each step. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think straight. I stood frozen outside the door to the living room, my whole body shaking. I had to know. I had to see it for myself, no matter how much I dreaded what was waiting. Slowly, I edged my phone around the corner of the wall, just enough to get a glimpse of what was happening without them noticing. And there they were. Hannah, with some guy I didn't recognize, sprawled out on our living room couch, wrapped around each other like they hadn't a care in the world. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I had built my life with, the mother of my children, was with someone else, right there in front of me. I filmed it. Don't ask me why. Maybe I thought I'd need it later, to prove it was real because I was still trying to convince myself this was some kind of horrible dream. But it wasn't. I could hear every sickening detail, every word, every laugh. They moved upstairs, talking about how much time they had before he had to leave. As soon as they were out of sight, I rushed into the living room. His clothes were scattered everywhere. My hands were shaking as I reached down and picked up his wallet. I opened it, my vision blurry with anger, and saw his driver's license. There he was, a personal trainer, just like her, with a smug, grinning face staring back at me. David Scott, it read. I burned that name into my mind. I stuffed the wallet back into his pants and left the house the same way I came in, quietly, as if I had never been there. I didn't know what else to do. I felt numb. I felt dead inside. I sat in the car for a while, staring at the video I had just recorded. I watched it again, every second of it, and something in me broke. I sobbed like I hadn't cried since I was a kid. It was pathetic. I was pathetic. How could I not have seen this coming? I stayed there, in the car, for what felt like hours. I knew I couldn't go back inside and pretend like nothing had happened. But I couldn't leave either. Not yet. Eventually, I made a decision. I would confront her, not with rage, not yet, but with cold certainty. I wanted to see her face when she realized I knew. I pulled into the driveway, opened the garage, and entered the house like it was any other day. When she heard me, she rushed downstairs, still in a robe, feigning surprise at my early return. She babbled on about getting ready for a bath, asked me how my day was, even kissed me on the cheek. I played along, pouring myself a drink, trying to act normal. Inside I was dying. And then, as she walked past me to pour us both a glass of wine, I saw him. David, sneaking down the stairs, slipping into the basement like some thief in the night. I could have said something. I could have ended it right there. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I let her wrap me up in her fake affection, pretending that everything was fine while I could feel my entire world shattering beneath me. I slept next to her that night, pretending not to notice the smell of him on her skin. That's when I knew I had to destroy her. I couldn't let her keep living this lie, smiling for her Instagram followers, acting like the perfect wife and mother when she was anything but. This was only the beginning. The next few days passed in a haze. Every time I looked at her, I felt the bile rise in my throat. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every smile she flashed at me, every kiss she planted on my cheek felt like acid burning through my skin. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to tell her I knew everything, but I didn't. Instead, I played my part, like an actor in a role I despised. She carried on like nothing had happened, posting to her blog, sharing her perfect life with the world. "Family time is the best time," she posted, with a photo of us at the park. I stared at that post for hours, watching the likes roll in. Thousands of people commenting, telling her how lucky she was, how inspiring her life looked. It was sickening. All I could think was, if they only knew. I knew I had to play it smart. If I exploded, if I confronted her without a plan, she'd twist it somehow. She'd find a way to play the victim, make me look like the crazy one. I couldn't let that happen. I needed proof, real proof, not just a video. I needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal ran. I started digging. When she was asleep, I went through her phone. I knew she was careful, too careful. There were no messages, no calls that seemed out of place. But I remembered David's name, and one night, while she slept soundly beside me, I searched his name through her email. That's when I found it, an email chain between them, cleverly disguised as work-related, but the undertones were unmistakable. They'd been meeting for months there, sessions, going far beyond anything professional. The pit in my stomach grew deeper with every email I read. I thought back to all those late nights she'd said she was working. The missed dinners, the trips she said were for networking. It was all a lie. I felt sick. But I needed more. I needed something concrete, something that would ruin her. So, I reached out to a friend of mine who worked in tech. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but desperation makes you do things you wouldn't normally consider. I told him I needed help tracking a phone. Strictly legal, I assured him, but he knew better. He agreed anyway. With his help, I installed a tracker on her phone. I felt dirty doing it, like I was sinking to her level, but I didn't care anymore. This was war. I watched her movements obsessively for days. Every time she left the house, I knew where she was. For the most part, it was innocent, meetings, gym sessions, but then, there was the day she went to a hotel. I was at work when the notification pinged on my phone. "Hannah is at the Ritz Hotel." My blood ran cold. I left the office without a word, driving straight to the hotel, barely able to keep my hands steady on the wheel. By the time I arrived, I was fuming. I knew exactly what I would find. I parked around the corner, far enough away that she wouldn't spot me. My heart was pounding as I watched the entrance, waiting. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I saw them, Hannah and David, walking out of the hotel together, laughing, completely oblivious to the world around them. They looked like a couple, like we used to look. They didn't see me. I kept my distance, watching them get into his truck. I followed them as they drove back to his place, watching them from a safe distance as they disappeared inside. I could feel my heart racing, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight that my knuckles turned white. This was it. This was the proof I needed. I sat outside his house for hours, my mind spinning. I wasn't sure if I wanted to storm in there and drag her out, screaming for the whole world to see, or if I wanted to let this play out a little longer. The rage inside me felt like it would rip me apart, but I knew I couldn't act on impulse. Not yet. I needed to keep my head. By the time she came home that night, I had already decided. I would ruin her, completely. And to do that, I needed her to feel safe, to think that I was still clueless. So, I played the part of the loving husband, keeping my distance but never letting on that I knew. It was agonizing, watching her carry on with her charade, but it was necessary. A few days later, I made my first move. I contacted a lawyer, one of the best in the state. I told him everything and showed him the evidence I'd gathered. He was shocked at the level of detail I had, and after reviewing everything, he nodded. "You have enough here to take everything from her," he said, his tone grim. "The house, the kids, her reputation, you'll destroy it all." That was the moment I realized just how far I was willing to go. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted to erase her, wipe her out of our lives so completely that she'd have nothing left. No career, no family, no kids. Just the hollow shell of a woman who thought she could betray me and walk away unscathed. But even as the plan came together, there was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. The kids, Noah and Emma. They adored their mother. How would I explain this to them? How could I rip their world apart without destroying them in the process? The thought made me sick, but I knew there was no turning back. She had made her choice, and now she would have to live with the consequences. The next step was to leak the affair. I knew she was careful, but the thing about secrets is that they never stay buried for long. I started dropping hints in the right places, anonymously, of course. I reached out to a few reporters who had covered her rise in the fitness world, subtly suggesting they look into her personal life. I even created a fake social media account, planting rumors in fitness forums and comment sections, just enough to get people talking. It didn't take long. Within days, whispers of Hannah's affair started circulating online. Nothing concrete, just enough to make people suspicious. I watched her blog carefully, waiting for the moment she would realize the damage was starting to spread. And then it happened. One evening, as she sat across from me at dinner, her phone buzzed. I watched her face as she read the message, the color draining from her cheeks. She glanced up at me, her eyes wide, but said nothing. I pretended not to notice, focusing on my food. Inside, I was grinning like a madman. Later that night, when the kids were in bed, she confronted me. "Do you know anything about this?" she asked, holding up her phone. The rumor had reached her. Someone had messaged her, asking if it was true that she was having an affair with a client. I played dumb. "What are you talking about?" I said, feigning confusion. She stared at me, searching for any sign of betrayal, but I gave her nothing. "It's just, someone's spreading rumors about me," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know who or why, but it's ridiculous." I shrugged, keeping my face neutral. "People love to gossip, especially when you're successful. Ignore it." She nodded, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She wasn't sure if I was telling the truth. She wasn't sure of anything anymore. And that's exactly how I wanted her, unsure, paranoid, teetering on the edge of ruin. Over the next few weeks, the cracks in Hannah's perfect life began to spread. The rumors gained momentum, feeding off the ambiguity I'd carefully constructed. Her blog comments section, once filled with adoration and support, started to shift. Followers who once praised her fitness routines began asking questions, their tone turning suspicious. "Is everything okay?" they'd ask. "There's a lot of talk going around." She'd reply with a smiley face or some vague motivational quote, trying to play it off, but the unease was clear. Her posts became less frequent. The sponsored content she usually bragged about, protein powders, workout gear, slowed to a trickle. The brands were getting skittish. The fitness world might seem flashy, but it's built on trust and image, and both of hers were eroding fast. I stayed silent, watching her unravel from a distance. At home, things were tense, though we never spoke about the affair directly. I was still playing the role of the supportive husband, while she acted like everything was fine. But there were moments, tiny slips, that revealed just how much this was eating away at her. One morning, she was preparing breakfast for the kids, her phone in hand as usual, when I noticed her hands trembling. A simple email notification made her flinch. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice dripping with feigned concern. She forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired, I guess." I didn't press further, but I could see the panic lurking beneath her eyes. The lies were catching up to her, and she knew it. But she wasn't ready to admit defeat. Not yet. That afternoon, she left for another meeting. I knew exactly where she was going, David's place. She'd been quieter about their meetups lately, probably sensing something was off, but not smart enough to stop completely. I waited until she was gone, then made my move. I took the kids over to my parents' house under the pretense of a family visit and returned home alone. It was time to set the final stage. I'd kept all the evidence, the emails, the photos, the text I'd recovered through her phone. But there was one thing left to do: expose her in the one place she cared about most, her career. I knew exactly how to hit her where it hurt. Hannah had built her fitness empire on the illusion of perfection. Her followers idolized her not just for her body but for her discipline, her family values, her authenticity. If they knew the truth, everything she had worked for would come crashing down. And that's exactly what I planned to make happen. I crafted a carefully worded email and sent it anonymously to her biggest sponsors and collaborators, people who had backed her financially, people who had tied their brands to her image. I attached screenshots of the emails and a couple of pictures I'd snapped of her with David outside his house. Nothing too explicit, just enough to make it clear she wasn't the woman they thought she was. I framed it as a concerned insider who had come across this information and thought they should know, out of loyalty to their brand. Within hours, the fallout began. I watched it unfold from the sidelines, checking her social media, her blog, her email, anything I could get access to. Her sponsors began pulling out, one by one. It started with a few cold emails. "We regret to inform you that we're suspending our partnership." Then, the bigger ones followed suit. Brand deals that were worth thousands vanished overnight. That evening, she sat on the couch, staring at her phone, visibly shaken. I could hear the faint ping of email notifications, each one a nail in the coffin of her career. She didn't say a word, but I knew she was spiraling. For the first time, she didn't rush to post her usual, daily inspiration quote. There were no motivational selfies, no pictures of her green smoothies. Just silence. The next day, things got worse. The comments on her blog turned vicious. Someone had leaked the affair, and now the rumors had teeth. Her followers were outraged, calling her a fraud, accusing her of being a hypocrite. The story spread like wildfire through fitness forums and gossip blogs. Her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. And still, she said nothing. I watched her crumble in real time, piece by piece. The constant stream of Instagram stories stopped. The gym sessions, once filled with confident selfies, were replaced by long stretches of inactivity. She was retreating into herself, trying to figure out how to salvage what was left of her image. But it was too late. I had made sure of that. She started spending more time locked in her office, her phone glued to her hand, frantically trying to control the damage. But there was nothing she could do. The whispers were turning into full-blown conversations, and no amount of PR spin could stop it now. One night, she finally broke down. "I think someone's trying to ruin me," she whispered, her voice barely audible as she sat across from me at dinner. Her eyes were red, her usual confident posture slouched. "I've lost 2 more sponsorships today, and people are talking about David." I kept my face blank, pretending to be concerned. "David? Why would they be talking about him?" She hesitated. "There are rumors." They think. She stopped herself, her lips trembling. I could see her mind racing, trying to find the right words. They think we're having an affair. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I stared at her, keeping my expression neutral. Are you? Her eyes widened in panic. What? No. Of course not, she stammered, the words tumbling out too fast, too desperate. I swear, it's just gossip. People are jealous, they're making stuff up. I let the silence stretch out between us, letting her feel the weight of her own lies. I could see her crumbling, her facade breaking down right in front of me. She was scared, terrified, even, and it was everything I'd hoped for. But I didn't push. Not yet. I needed her to feel safe, to think she still had control. So, I simply nodded, pretending to believe her. I trust you, I said, my voice calm and measured. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. She let out a shaky breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Thank you, she whispered, relief flooding her face. I'm so glad you understand. But I didn't understand. I never would. That night, after she had gone to bed, I sat in the dark, watching the video I'd taken of her and David for what felt like the 100th time. Every time I watched it, the rage bubbled up inside me all over again, but I needed to hold on to it. It fueled me. It kept me focused on what I had to do next. I wasn't finished with her yet. I was going to take everything from her, our kids, her career, her reputation. She would lose it all, just like she had taken everything from me when she chose to betray our family. The next phase was the hardest, but it had to be done. I needed to get the kids out of this mess before it all blew up. It wasn't their fault, and I wouldn't let them get dragged down with her. But it wasn't going to be easy. Hannah was their mother, and despite everything, they loved her. I couldn't just rip them away without a plan. That's when I knew what I had to do next. Something drastic. Something she wouldn't see coming. The tension between us thickened, invisible but suffocating. Every day was a new battle of pretending, her pretending she was holding it together, me pretending I didn't know about David, pretending I wasn't the one pulling the strings to unravel her life. It was a cruel dance, one that took a toll on both of us. But I was ready for the next step. I needed to shift the focus toward the kids. They were my only priority now. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, I decided to set the wheels in motion. Hannah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for the world to fall apart. The usual confidence that radiated from her had all but disappeared. She barely posted anymore, her carefully crafted online persona crumbling along with her career. The rumors about David had spread, and her attempts to shut them down were proving futile. People were no longer just whispering, they were talking openly. It was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. I sat down next to her, acting calm, but my heart was racing. We need to talk about the kids, I said, keeping my tone level. She looked up from her phone, her face tight with stress. What about them? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. They've been asking questions, I lied. They sense that something's wrong. Her eyes darted away, guilt flashing across her face. I know. I've just been so overwhelmed with everything, with work. I'll try harder. I nodded slowly. I think they need stability. They need a little distance from all this chaos. She frowned. What are you talking about? I'm saying we should consider some time apart, I said, leaning in, watching her reaction closely. I've been thinking about taking them to my parents for a while. Just until things calm down. Her face twisted in shock. You want to take the kids away from me? Her voice cracked, and for a split second, I saw the fear. Real fear. It was exactly what I wanted. Not permanently. I lied again. Just for a while. I think it would be good for them. There's too much going on here. Too much stress. Her eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. No. No, you can't just take them. They're my kids too. I'm not trying to punish you, Hannah, I said, though every word out of my mouth was calculated to do exactly that. I just want to protect them. They don't need to see us like this, stressed, disconnected. They deserve better. She wiped her eyes, her hands trembling. Are you saying you want a separation? I shrugged. Maybe. Maybe we both need some time to think. I'm not losing my kids, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I can't lose them. I leaned back, watching her unravel, her tears falling faster now. I'm not taking them from you, I said softly. But right now you need to focus on your career. You need to fix this mess with David, with your sponsors. They're going to ask questions soon, real questions. And you need to be ready for that. Her face went pale. She knew it was true. The cracks were turning into gaping holes, and soon, she wouldn't be able to hide anything anymore. She looked at me, desperate, searching for something that wasn't there. Do you really think that's best for the kids? She asked, her voice broken. I nodded. I do. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. She knew she was losing control, not just of her career, but of everything. I could see it in her eyes, the panic, the uncertainty, the helplessness. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Okay, she whispered finally. Take them for a while. Just don't keep them from me. That was the first crack in her armor. The first time she'd shown any real vulnerability since I found out about the affair. It was strange to see her like that, so powerless, so afraid. But it didn't soften me. Not anymore. The very next day, I made arrangements. I told the kids we were going on a trip to visit Grandma and Grandpa, making it sound like an exciting adventure. They were too young to understand the full weight of what was happening, and for that, I was thankful. Hannah stayed behind, watching silently as I packed their bags, her eyes red from crying. She didn't argue, didn't try to stop me. She knew she didn't have the strength for it. We left the house that afternoon. I didn't look back. At my parents' house, the kids settled in easily. My mom doted on them, and my dad kept them busy with activities in the backyard. For them, it was a fun getaway. For me, it was the beginning of the end. I called a lawyer the next morning. I laid everything out, the affair, the lies, the breakdown of our marriage. I wasn't playing games anymore. I want full custody, I told him, my voice steely. And I want to take everything from her. The lawyer was cautious. Family courts tend to favor mothers, especially when the kids are young. Do you have evidence that could sway a judge? I didn't hesitate. I have everything I need. I sent him the photos, the emails, the video I'd recorded that night. He didn't say much, but I could hear the shift in his tone. This could work in your favor, he said finally. But you need to be prepared for a fight. If she decides to challenge this, it could get messy. Messy was fine by me. I was prepared for messy. I was prepared for war. Back at home, Hannah was spiraling. I kept tabs on her through social media, watching her increasingly erratic posts. She started sharing vague, cryptic messages about mental health and stress. Her usual upbeat, motivational content was replaced with long rants about overcoming personal struggles and facing judgment from those who don't understand. The comments were brutal. People weren't buying it anymore. The rumors about her affair with David had spread too far, and no amount of damage control could fix it. Her followers, once loyal and adoring, were now turning on her. The fitness industry, always looking for the next scandal, had found its newest target. It wasn't long before one of her sponsors dropped her publicly. They posted a statement on their website, distancing themselves from her and her brand. The reason was clear, though they didn't say it outright: the affair had ruined her image. Hannah tried to reach out to me, but I didn't respond. She left voicemail after voicemail, her voice cracking with desperation. Please come home, she begged. We can fix this. We can work it out. Just bring the kids back. But there was no going back. One evening, as I sat in my parents' living room, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was from a local news outlet, and the headline made my heart skip a beat. Fitness influencer Hannah Scott under fire for alleged affair with client. I clicked on the link, my pulse quickening as I read the article. They had everything: the affair, the leaked emails, the photos. It was all there, laid out for the world to see. Her career, her reputation, everything she had built was now public scandal. The article didn't name me or the kids, but it didn't matter. Everyone knew who she was, and now, everyone knew what she had done. It was over. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction wash over me. I had done it. I had destroyed her. But as I sat there, the weight of it all began to settle in. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about my kids. About the life we had built together, the life that was now in ruins. I had won. But at what cost? The day the story broke, Hannah's world came crashing down. I wasn't there to see it, but I could imagine her reaction, sitting in our kitchen, staring at her phone, her face drained of color as she scrolled through the article. Her perfect life, the one she had built so carefully online, was shattered. And there was no coming back from it. Calls and messages flooded in, not from friends but from reporters, curious strangers, and the vultures that circled whenever someone in the public eye fell from grace. Her phone must have been ringing nonstop, with people eager to dig deeper into the scandal. I didn't hear from her that day. Not a single call or text. In fact, she went completely silent, no more posts or attempts at damage control. It was like she had vanished. The only update came from her social media account, which had gone from a buzzing hive of activity to a ghost town. All of her sponsored posts were gone, the comments turned off, and her usual cheery, good morning videos were missing. But I knew this was far from over. A few days later, I got a call from my lawyer. "She's fighting back," he said, sounding more concerned than I expected. "She's claiming that the leaks were fabricated, that someone is out to destroy her reputation." I sighed. Of course she would. She'd rather accuse the world of conspiring against her than admit she'd ruined everything herself. But I wasn't worried. The truth was on my side, and I had the evidence to back it up. "Let her try," I said coldly. "She's grasping at straws." Days passed, and Hannah's situation grew worse. More articles popped up, feeding off the initial news, dragging her deeper into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Forums were ablaze with speculation, some defending her, others tearing her apart. The narrative had spiraled beyond her control. One morning, while the kids were out playing in my parents' yard, I received a message from her. My phone buzzed, and for a moment I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to hear what she had to say, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a voice message. I pressed play, and the sound of her voice filled the room, but it wasn't the voice I was used to hearing. There was no bravado, no carefully constructed confidence. She sounded broken. "Ethan, I don't know what to do anymore." Her voice was weak, strained, as though every word was a struggle. "I've lost everything. The sponsors, the deals, my followers, they've all turned on me. I know you're angry. I know I messed up, but I need to see the kids. I need to talk to you." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't mean for it to get this far. Please, just come home. We can fix this." I turned off the message, staring at my phone as her voice faded away. The woman who had betrayed me was asking for forgiveness. But it was too late. I had already set things in motion, and there was no turning back now. A week passed, and I returned home to deal with what came next. My parents offered to keep the kids for a few more days, sensing that things were about to get even more turbulent. I agreed, knowing it was better for them to be away from the chaos that was brewing. When I pulled into the driveway, the house felt different. It was the same structure, the same rooms, but something fundamental had shifted. The warmth that had once filled our home was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. I stepped inside and found Hannah in the kitchen, sitting at the table, her phone discarded beside her. She looked up as I entered, her eyes hollow and rimmed with red. She hadn't slept, that much was clear. Her hair was a mess, and she looked thinner, as if the weight of her crumbling life was physically eating away at her. The sight of her like that stirred something in me, pity perhaps, but I quickly pushed it down. I couldn't afford to be weak now. "You're back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I replied, standing by the doorway, keeping my distance. The air between us was thick with tension. "Where are the kids?" "They're with my parents." She nodded, looking away. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched out, filling the space with everything left unsaid. Then, finally, she broke it. "Why are you doing this to me?" I stared at her, incredulous. "Are you serious? Why am I doing this to you? You destroyed everything, Hannah. You lied, you cheated, and now you're asking why I'm doing this?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice cracking. "I know I did, but it wasn't supposed to end like this. I didn't want to hurt you or the kids. She choked on her words, wiping her eyes furiously. "You didn't want to hurt us?" I repeated, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You've been lying to me for months. Sneaking around with him, smiling in my face, acting like nothing was wrong. You destroyed our family, Hannah." She shook her head. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was going to stop. I cut her off. But you didn't. And now look where we are." There was a beat of silence as she looked down, tears streaming down her face. I knew what was coming next. The plea, the apology, the desperate attempt to claw her way out of the mess she had made. "I'll do anything," she whispered. "Just don't take the kids from me. Please." There it was. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. "Why should I trust you? Why should I believe anything you say now?" She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "Because I'm their mother. They need me. I know I messed up, but they shouldn't suffer because of my mistakes. We can figure this out. We can go to therapy. We can fix it, Ethan. I know we can." I shook my head, my jaw clenched tight. "It's not that simple. You destroyed my trust, Hannah. You destroyed everything we had." "I know," she sobbed. "I know, but we can still save it. Please, I'm begging you." I could see the desperation in her eyes, the fear of losing everything. For a moment, just a brief flicker of a moment, I thought about what she was asking. The kids did love her. Noah and Emma adored their mother, and the thought of taking them away from her, no matter how much she had hurt me, weighed heavy on my heart. But then I remembered the look on her face that night, the way she laughed with David, the way she betrayed me without a second thought. I couldn't forget that. I couldn't forgive it. "It's too late," I said, my voice low and firm. "There's no fixing this." Her face crumpled as she let out a heart-wrenching sob, her hands covering her face. "Please, don't do this." I watched her, my heart hardening with every tear she shed. She had made her choice months ago, and now she was living with the consequences. "I'll talk to my lawyer," I said, my voice cold. "We'll work out visitation, but the kids are staying with me. I'm filing for full custody." Her sobs grew louder, and she collapsed against the table, defeated. As I turned to leave the room, her voice broke through the sound of her crying. "Ethan, wait!" I stopped, my hand on the doorframe, but I didn't turn around. "I'm pregnant." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My entire body froze, my mind reeling. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Slowly, I turned to face her. "What did you just say?" She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "I'm pregnant," she whispered again, her voice trembling. "I found out 2 weeks ago." For a long moment, I just stood there, my mind struggling to process what she had just said. Pregnant. She was pregnant. My thoughts swirled in a chaotic mess of anger, confusion, and fear. I forced myself to speak. "Is it mine?" Her eyes widened, and she shook her head furiously. "Of course it's yours. I swear, Ethan, it's yours." But I didn't believe her. Not after everything. I backed away, feeling the room tilt around me. I can't deal with this right now. And without another word, I walked out of the room, leaving her sobbing in the kitchen, leaving the life I once knew behind. I couldn't get her words out of my head. I'm pregnant. They echoed in my mind over and over, louder with each passing hour. By the time I made it back to my parents' house, I was numb, my body running on autopilot. I went through the motions of dinner with the kids, nodding absent-mindedly to my mom's questions about how things were going. I couldn't tell her. I couldn't tell anyone. The world had just exploded in my face, and I didn't even know what was real anymore. After I put Noah and Emma to bed, I sat on the back porch, staring out into the darkness. My thoughts swirled in a dizzying blur of anger, disbelief, and fear. Was Hannah telling the truth? Could she really be pregnant? Or was this just another lie, another desperate attempt to hold on to the last remnants of control? I needed answers. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Hannah. I'm not lying. We need to talk. I ignored it. I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not yet. Instead, I texted my lawyer first thing the next morning. I needed to know my options, needed to understand how this new piece of the puzzle would affect the custody battle. The pregnancy could change everything. It could make things complicated, more complicated than they already were. By noon, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, laying everything out on the table. She says she's pregnant. I told him, my voice heavy with disbelief. But I don't know if it's mine. I don't even know if she's telling the truth. He frowned, leaning back in his chair. That could be a game changer, depending on how things play out. If the child is yours, it could complicate custody arrangements. And if it's not? I shook my head. I don't know what to believe anymore. He nodded thoughtfully. We need to confirm the pregnancy first, and if it's true, then you'll need a paternity test. I wouldn't make any decisions until you have all the facts. Facts. That's what I needed. Cold, hard facts. No more lies, no more guessing. Just the truth. But truth was a slippery thing when it came to Hannah. That evening I called her. My heart pounded as I listened to the phone ring, and when she finally answered, her voice was small, shaky. Ethan. Is it true? I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Yes, she whispered. I'm pregnant. I've been to the doctor. It's real. My stomach twisted into knots. And you're telling me it's mine? She let out a choked sob. I swear to you it's yours. David and I, we were careful. I swear, Ethan. I wouldn't lie about this. I clenched my jaw, my mind racing. She had lied to me about so many things. Why should I believe her now? We'll need a paternity test, I said flatly. If you're telling the truth, we'll confirm it. I understand, she replied quietly. I expected you to say that. There was a long pause, and for the first time, I heard something in her voice I hadn't expected: resignation. She knew the walls were closing in. She knew this was her last card to play. We should also talk about the kids, she continued, her voice barely audible. I want to see them. They're asking about me. I hadn't told Noah and Emma much, only that Mommy needed some time. I couldn't bear to break their hearts by telling them the truth about what was happening. They were too young to understand the mess their mother had made of our lives. I'll bring them over next weekend, I said, trying to keep my tone measured. But things are going to change. You know that. I know, she whispered. I know I've messed everything up. But I don't want to lose them. You should have thought about that before you threw our family away. I snapped, the anger bubbling up inside me. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't care. I was past the point of sympathy. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. The weekend came too quickly, and before I knew it, I was standing outside our house, her house now, with Noah and Emma by my side. They were excited to see their mom, blissfully unaware of the chaos swirling around them. As we walked up to the front door, I felt the familiar knot of dread tighten in my chest. This house didn't feel like home anymore. It was a place filled with betrayal, lies, and secrets. Secrets I hadn't even begun to fully uncover. Hannah opened the door, and for a moment the sight of her caught me off guard. She looked different, paler, thinner, her once glowing skin dull and lifeless. Her hair, usually styled perfectly for her Instagram photos, hung limply around her shoulders. She was a shadow of the woman I once knew. Noah and Emma ran into her arms, giggling and smiling, completely oblivious to the tension between us. I watched as Hannah hugged them tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy missed you so much," she whispered, her voice trembling. I stood there awkwardly, watching the scene unfold, feeling like a stranger in my own family. When Hannah finally looked up at me, her eyes were filled with a mix of fear and desperation. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I nodded, stepping inside. The kids were already running into the living room, excited to play with the toys they hadn't seen in days. For them, it was as if nothing had changed. We moved into the kitchen, the same place where I had confronted her, the same place where everything had started to fall apart. The weight of it pressed down on me as I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "What do you want to say?" I asked, my voice cold. Hannah swallowed hard, looking down at the floor. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. About what I did, and how much I hurt you." I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses. She wiped her eyes, taking a shaky breath. "I know you probably don't believe me, but I never meant for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you or the kids." I scoffed. "You didn't think cheating on me would hurt us?" She flinched, but I didn't care. "I was stupid," she whispered. "I got caught up in the attention, in the excitement of it all. David, he was just an escape. But he doesn't mean anything to me, Ethan. You and the kids, you're my family." I shook my head, feeling the familiar anger boiling inside me. "It's too late for that, Hannah." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I know it's too late for us, but I don't want to lose the kids. They need me, Ethan." I stared at her, trying to figure out if this was just another performance, another manipulation. But this time, there was something different in her eyes. She was scared, genuinely scared, and that fear was gnawing at her. "I'm not trying to take them away from you," I said after a long pause. "But things will be different. We're done, Hannah. There's no going back." She nodded, her face crumpling as she wiped away more tears. I know. I can't believe I let it get this bad." "You made your choices," I said flatly. "And now you'll live with them." The silence between us was thick and heavy. I could hear Noah and Emma laughing in the other room, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing between their parents. "I'll take the paternity test," Hannah said, breaking the silence. "If that's what you want, we'll do it." I nodded. "It's what I want." For a moment, I thought about what the test might reveal. What if she was telling the truth? What if the baby was mine? The thought made my stomach churn. I didn't want to be tied to her any longer than I had to be, but if this child was mine, I would have no choice. "I'll stay for a little while," I said, my voice tight. "But only for the kids." She nodded, wiping her eyes again. "Thank you." That night, as I sat in the living room with Noah and Emma, playing a game of cards, I couldn't shake the thought of what lay ahead. The paternity test. The custody battle. The endless legal fights. It all felt like too much, like a burden I wasn't ready to carry. But what choice did I have? After the kids went to bed, I stepped outside for some air. The cool night breeze felt like a small relief, but the weight of everything pressed down on me harder than ever. I needed to clear my head, to figure out what my next move would be. And then, as I stared up at the stars, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. My heart sank as I read it. "I need to talk to you. It's about Hannah. Call me. David." My blood ran cold. David. The last person I ever wanted to hear from. But I knew I had to make the call. There was something he needed to say, something that could change everything. With trembling hands I dialed the number. The phone rang twice before David picked up. His voice was surprisingly calm, too calm for a man who had been at the center of the hurricane that ripped my life apart. "Ethan," he said cautiously. "What do you want, David?" My voice was cold, sharp. I had nothing left to say to him, but something in me needed to know why he was reaching out now. There was a pause. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. But this can't wait." I clenched my jaw. "Get to the point. I need to tell you the truth about what happened with Hannah." I let out a bitter laugh. "What truth, David?" "You slept with my wife." "I think that's pretty clear." His voice tightened. "It's more complicated than that. Enlighten me." I was on the verge of hanging up, but something in his tone stopped me. It wasn't the smug, self-assured attitude I had expected. Instead, there was an urgency there, something that kept me listening. He took a deep breath. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to come between you two. It started as flirting, and I know that sounds bad, but it wasn't supposed to go this far. Hannah, was the one who pushed it forward. I didn't think it would turn into what it did." I didn't respond. My grip on the phone tightened as I listened to his pathetic excuses. "I swear, Ethan, I didn't push her," David continued, his words quick, like he was trying to get them out before he lost his nerve. "She said things were already bad between you two, that she was looking for a way out. I was an escape for her." My teeth clenched as I fought the urge to scream. "So that makes it okay? You thought you could be the hero and save her from the life she built with me?" "No," he said quietly, almost pleading. "I never thought it would go this far. But now I need to come clean." I stayed silent, my mind swirling with a toxic mix of anger and suspicion. "There's something you need to know, Ethan," David continued, his voice cracking slightly. "It's about the pregnancy." My stomach lurched. The pregnancy. The one thing that had me teetering on the edge of everything I thought I knew. "What about it?" "I'm not the father," he said firmly. "I know that for a fact." I froze, my mind spinning. "How the hell can you be sure?" "Because Hannah and I never went all the way," David said, his voice low. "I know that's hard to believe, but it's the truth. We messed around, we crossed lines, but it never got to that point. If she's pregnant, the baby is yours." The blood rushed in my ears. "You expect me to believe that? After everything?" "I'm telling you the truth, Ethan," he said, his voice softening. "We didn't sleep together. Not like that." I stood there stunned. For weeks, I had been convinced that David was just another guy who had taken advantage of my wife's vulnerability, that he had been the one to destroy everything we had built. But now he was telling me that he hadn't gone as far as I'd thought, that the baby, if there even was one, was mine. What was she trying to pull then? I demanded. "Why would she lie about this?" David sighed. "I think she's scared, man. She knows she's lost everything. Maybe she thought she could salvage something by making you doubt yourself. I don't know. But I'm telling you, Ethan, I'm not the father. This mess, it's all on her." My chest tightened with rage and confusion. I had spent weeks spiraling in anger, thinking David had crossed every line, but now he was telling me that the one thing holding me back, the pregnancy, was just another manipulation from Hannah. I couldn't take it anymore. "Stay away from us," I said through gritted teeth. "I don't want to hear from you again." "I will," David said quickly. "I'm done with this. I'm sorry for everything." I hung up before he could say another word. I couldn't breathe. I stood in my parents' living room, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to make sense of what had just happened. If David was telling the truth, then Hannah had been playing a much crueler game than I had imagined. She had led me to believe that the baby might not be mine just to keep me close, just to stop me from walking away. It was all lies. I had to confront her. There was no avoiding it now. This entire nightmare needed to end, once and for all. When I arrived at the house, Hannah was waiting for me, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked fragile, smaller than I'd ever seen her, but it didn't stir any sympathy in me. I was past feeling sorry for her. I talked to David, I said, my voice cold and measured. I didn't bother with a greeting. Her eyes widened in panic. What did he say? That you've been lying. Again. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization that her last card had just been exposed. You told me you were pregnant, I continued, taking a step closer. But you let me believe it might not be mine. You made me doubt everything, even when you knew the truth. Her lip quivered. Stop, I snapped, cutting her off. No more lies, Hannah. No more manipulation. I want the truth. She broke down, collapsing into the chair at the kitchen table. I didn't know what else to do, she sobbed. I thought if you thought it was David's, you'd stay. That you wouldn't leave me. I stared at her in disbelief. You lied about your pregnancy, our baby, just to keep me here? She nodded, her shoulders shaking as she cried. I was so scared, Ethan. I didn't know how to fix everything, and I thought if I told you the truth, you'd leave. I felt a surge of cold anger course through me. I'm already gone, Hannah. You destroyed everything the moment you decided to cheat. This was just the final nail in the coffin. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. But the baby is yours. I swear, Ethan. It's yours. I shook my head, my heart hardening as I listened to her sobs. We'll do a paternity test. We'll figure that out. But this? Us? It's over. She covered her face with her hands, breaking into sobs again. I know it's over. I can't believe it came to this. I stood there, feeling nothing but emptiness. The woman in front of me, the one who had been my wife, the mother of my children, was a stranger now. She had lied and manipulated and twisted our life into something unrecognizable. And now, it was all falling apart. I'll file for divorce, I said quietly. We'll figure out custody, but the kids stay with me. You'll get visitation, but I'm not letting them grow up in a house built on lies. She didn't argue. She didn't fight. She just nodded through her tears, accepting her defeat. In the days that followed, I started putting the pieces in place to move forward. The lawyer was quick to draft up the paperwork, and the paternity test was arranged. For now, all I could do was wait, knowing that regardless of the result, the outcome was the same. The damage was done. A week later, the test came back. The baby was mine. It should have been a relief, but it wasn't. It only cemented the reality that I was tied to Hannah, tied to this betrayal, for the rest of my life. But even with that knowledge, I knew I had made the right choice. Staying with her, trying to fix something that had been shattered beyond repair, would have only destroyed me. The divorce was finalized quickly. Hannah didn't fight it. She didn't have the strength. Her career, once built on a foundation of lies, had crumbled into dust. Her social media presence vanished, the sponsors disappeared, and the adoring followers she had cultivated for years turned on her as the truth of her affair spread. She lost everything. I kept the house and full custody of the kids. Hannah was granted supervised visitation, but she wasn't the mother she once had been. The bright, confident woman I had married was gone, replaced by someone broken and lost. The kids didn't understand it fully, they just knew Mommy was sad and things had changed. But they were resilient. They had me, and that was enough. One evening, after tucking Noah and Emma into bed, I sat in the quiet of our home, feeling a strange sense of peace. It was over. The lies, the betrayal, the endless cycle of hurt, it was all over. I had made it through. I would never forget what Hannah had done. The pain would always be there, lurking in the corners of my heart. But now, there was room for something else, hope. Hope for a future that wasn't tainted by her lies. Hope for healing. I had been broken, but I was still standing. And that, I realized, was enough. I was free.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit like and leave a comment with your favorite part. We'd love to hear your perspective.